Someone's screaming in your face, your heart's pounding, your fists are clenched. Every cell in your body is begging you to fire back, to destroy them with words. But what if I told you that the most powerful thing you could ever say in that moment is something so calm, so precise, so psychologically disarming that the other person literally forgets what they were angry about? Today, I'm giving you 10 of those replies, not just phrases, weapons, psychological tools used by hostage negotiators, therapists, world leaders, and the most emotionally intelligent people on this planet. And by the end of this video, you will never lose an argument again. Not because you'll fight harder, but because you'll never need to fight at all. Before we begin, why most people lose arguments they've already won. Before I give you these 10 replies, we need to understand something fundamental, something that will change how you see every conflict for the rest of your life. Here it is. Most arguments are not about what they're about. Let me say that again. Most arguments are not about what they're about. When your partner says, "You never do the dishes," that's not about the dishes. When your coworker says, "You didn't CC me on that email," that's not about the email. When your mother says, "You never call me," that's not about the phone call. Every argument, at its core, is about one of three things. 1, I don't feel respected. 2, I don't feel heard. 3, I don't feel safe. That's it. That's the entire universe of human conflict compressed into 3 sentences. And here's why this matters. If you respond to the surface argument, the dishes, the email, the phone call, you will never resolve the conflict. You're playing chess on the wrong board. You're answering a question nobody asked. But if you respond to the real argument, the one hiding underneath, something miraculous happens. The other person's entire nervous system shifts. Their shoulders drop, their voice softens, their eyes change, because for maybe the first time in the entire argument, they feel like someone actually gets it. Now, I want to tell you a story, a true story, and it perfectly illustrates why these 10 replies are so devastatingly effective. In 2005, FBI hostage negotiator Chris Voss was called to a standoff in Brooklyn. A man had barricaded himself in an apartment with a weapon. He was screaming, he was threatening. Every tactical team was ready to breach. But Chris Voss didn't breach. He didn't yell back, he didn't threaten, he didn't give ultimatums. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, "It sounds like you've been going through something really difficult and you feel like nobody's been listening." Silence. The man on the other side of that door, a man holding a weapon, a man in full fight or flight mode, went quiet for the first time in hours. And then he started talking, really talking, and within 90 minutes, he walked out peacefully. No one was hurt, no doors were broken, no shots were fired, and it all started with one calm sentence. That is the power of what I'm about to teach you. These aren't just nice things to say. These are precision instruments designed to bypass the emotional brain and speak directly to the part of a person that desperately wants peace, but doesn't know how to get there. So, let's begin. Smart reply number 1, you're right. Smart reply number 1, 2 words, possibly the 2 most powerful words in the English language during a conflict. You're right. Now, before you click away, before you say, "That's giving up, that's being weak, that's letting them win," hold on, stay with me, because this is not about surrender. This is about strategy. Let's break down what happens neurologically when someone is arguing with you. When a person is in an argument, their amygdala, the threat detection center of the brain, is fully activated. Cortisol is flooding their system. Adrenaline is pumping. Their prefrontal cortex, the rational, logical part of the brain, is essentially offline. They cannot hear you. They cannot process logic. They cannot consider your perspective. They are, in the most literal neurological sense, temporarily incapable of reason. Now, what does every person do when they're in this state? They try to make the other person see their point. They
escalate, they raise their voice, they repeat themselves, they bring up old grievances, they stack arguments on top of arguments. Why? Because they don't feel heard. Their brain is stuck in a loop. They're not hearing me. I need to say it louder. I need to say it differently. I need to say it again. But the moment you say "you're right," that loop breaks. It's like pulling the plug on a machine. The engine has nothing to push against. The argument has nothing to feed on. And here's the critical nuance. You don't have to agree with everything they've said. You just have to find the one thing, even a small thing, that they are right about, and you acknowledge it. Let me give you examples. Your boss says, "This report is late, it's sloppy, and I'm questioning whether you're taking this job seriously." Now, your gut reaction, your amygdala's reaction, is to defend yourself, to explain, to justify, to list all the reasons the report was late, to mention the 3 other projects you're juggling, to point out that you stayed until 9 p.m. last Tuesday. But here's what happens if you do that. Your boss doesn't hear your defense. They hear excuses, and now they're more frustrated, not less. Instead, try this. "You're right. the report was late, and that's not the standard I want to set. Here's what I'm going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again. Watch what happens. Your boss was prepared for a fight. They had their next 3 counterarguments loaded and ready. But you didn't give them a wall to push against. You gave them an open door. And now, instead of a 10-minute argument that leaves both of you resentful, you have a 30-second exchange that leaves your boss thinking, wow, that person is mature. That person is accountable. That person is someone I can trust. You didn't lose. You won more than you would have by arguing. Your partner says, you always put your friends before me. I feel like I'm your last priority. Now you know that's not entirely true. You know you canceled plans last week to spend time with them. You know you texted them during your lunch break yesterday. You know... Stop. Here's what you say. You're right. I can see how it felt that way, especially this week. Your feelings matter to me, and I want to do better. You didn't say you're right, I'm a terrible partner. You didn't agree with every word. You acknowledged the feeling. You validated the experience. And here's something most people don't understand about relationships. Your partner doesn't want to be right. They want to be seen. The moment you see them, the argument dissolves. Now, some of you are thinking, but what if they're genuinely wrong? What if they're being unreasonable? What if saying you're right reinforces bad behavior? Fair question. And here's the answer. You're not saying you're right to end the conversation. You're saying it to change the conversation. Once you've acknowledged their point, once their nervous system has calmed down, then you can introduce your perspective. Then they can actually hear you. Then you can have a productive discussion. Think of it like this. You can't steer a car that's spinning out of control. You have to wait for the tires to grip the road first. Your right is how you help the tires grip the road. Let me give you the advanced version of this technique. It's called the You're Right plus Redirect method. Step 1, you're right. Acknowledge what's valid. Step 2, bridge. And here's what I think we can do about it. Step 3, redirect. Move towards a solution. Example, someone says, this project is a disaster because nobody communicates. You say, you're right. Communication has been a real problem on this project. I felt it too. What if we set up a 15-minute check-in every morning so nothing slips through the cracks? You validated. You agreed. You redirected. And now you're both on the same team solving a problem, instead of 2 people on opposite sides of a battle. That is the power of you're right. 2 words. Game-changing. And I want to go even deeper on the psychology here, because this is fascinating. There's a concept in negotiation theory called the need for acknowledgement. It was studied extensively by Dr. William Ury, co-author of Getting to Yes,
one of the most influential books on negotiation ever written. Ury found that in the vast majority of conflicts, personal, professional, even international diplomatic disputes, the primary barrier to resolution was not that the 2 sides disagreed, it was that neither side felt acknowledged by the other. He tells this incredible story about a negotiation between 2 Middle Eastern leaders. They'd been going back and forth for days, no progress. Every proposal was rejected. Every concession was met with a counter-demand. Finally, one leader turned to the other and said something like, I understand that your people have suffered. I understand that you carry that suffering with you. And I want you to know, I see it. And the entire tone of the negotiation shifted. Not because the political issues were resolved, not because anyone made a concession, but because one human being looked at another human being and said, essentially, you're right to feel what you feel. That's what you're right does. It's not about facts. It's not about logic. It's about humanity. And here's the truly remarkable thing. Once you start using this, you'll notice something about yourself. You'll notice that it gets easier to find things other people are right about. Because the truth is, in almost every argument, the other person is right about something. We just can't see it when our own amygdala is firing. So your right isn't just a tool for disarming others. It's a tool for disarming yourself. Smart reply number 2. I need a moment to think about what you just said. Smart reply number 2. And this one is going to feel counterintuitive. It's going to feel like you're showing weakness. But I promise you, this is one of the strongest things a human being can say in the middle of a heated exchange. I need a moment to think about what you just said. Let's talk about why this works, and then I'll show you how to use it in 5 different situations. First, the psychology. When you're in an argument, there's an invisible clock ticking. Not a real clock, a social clock. There's an unspoken pressure to respond immediately. If someone says something aggressive, you feel like you have to fire back within 2 seconds, or you've lost. This is pure lizard brain nonsense, and it's the cause of about 90% of things we regret saying. Think about it. How many times have you said something in the heat of the moment? Something sharp, something cruel, something you didn't even fully mean, and then spent the next 3 days wishing you could take it back?
That's because you were responding on the amygdala's timeline, not your prefrontal cortex's timeline. The amygdala operates in milliseconds: fight or flight, react, survive. The prefrontal cortex needs seconds, sometimes minutes. It needs time to process, contextualize, weigh consequences, consider the other person's perspective. When you say, "I need a moment to think about what you just said," you're essentially pressing pause on the amygdala and giving the prefrontal cortex time to come online. But here's why it's also brilliant from a social dynamics perspective. It signals to the other person that you're taking them seriously. Think about what most people do in an argument. They interrupt, they talk over you. They're clearly not listening, they're just waiting for their turn to speak. And you can feel it. You can feel when someone isn't actually processing your words. It's infuriating. It makes you want to yell louder. But when someone stops, looks at you, and says, "I need a moment to think about what you just said," that's the conversational equivalent of a standing ovation. It says, "What you said was important enough to pause for. Your words have weight. You matter." And the effect is immediate. The other person's intensity drops, their volume drops, their defenses drop, because they got the one thing they were fighting for all along: to be taken seriously. Now, let me show you the variations, because this reply isn't just one sentence, it's a family of sentences, and you'll want to have several in your back pocket for different situations. Variation 1, the gentle pause. That's a lot to take in. Give me a second. Use this with friends, family, partners. It's soft, it's human, it shows vulnerability without weakness. Variation 2, the professional pause. That's a valid point, and I want to give it
The consideration it deserves. Can I take a moment? Use this in meetings, with clients, with bosses. It's polished. It makes you look thoughtful and composed. Variation 3, the deep pause. I can tell this is really important to you, and I don't want to give you a careless response. Let me sit with this for a minute. Use this when the other person is emotionally charged. This one is incredibly powerful because it communicates 3 things simultaneously. I see your emotion. I respect it. I'm going to honor it with a careful response. Variation 4, the tactical pause. You've brought up something I hadn't considered. I need to think about that. Use this when you genuinely don't know what to say, or when the other person has made a point that challenges your position. This one is also great because it shows intellectual humility, one of the most attractive and respected qualities in any human interaction. Variation 5, the redirect pause. I hear you, and I think what you're saying deserves more than a quick response. Can we come back to this in an hour when I've had time to really think it through? Use this when the argument is spiraling and you need a full exit. This is your escape hatch, and it's a graceful one. Now, let me tell you about the neuroscience of silence, because this is incredible. Dr. Andrew Huberman, neuroscientist at Stanford, has talked extensively about how silence affects the brain during social interactions. When there's an unexpected pause in a heated conversation, the other person's brain undergoes what's called a prediction error. Here's what that means. The brain is a prediction machine. It's constantly forecasting what's going to happen next. In an argument, your brain predicts they're going to fire back, they're going to defend themselves, they're going to attack me. When instead you get silence, a thoughtful, deliberate pause, the brain's prediction fails. And when the brain's prediction fails, it does something remarkable. It shifts from fight mode to curiosity mode. The amygdala quiets, the prefrontal cortex activates. The brain goes from, "I need to defend myself," to, "Wait, what's happening? What are they going to say?" And in that moment of curiosity, the entire emotional landscape of the conversation changes. The argument has shifted from combat to anticipation. The other person is no longer your opponent. They're your audience. And you haven't even said anything yet. That's the power of the pause. I once saw this used masterfully in a real situation. A friend of mine, let's call him David, was in a heated argument with his business partner. The business partner was accusing him of not pulling his weight, of being absent, of caring more about his other ventures. David's instinct was to list every sacrifice he'd made for the company, to pull up emails, to cite hours, to go on the defensive. And honestly, he had every right to. The accusations weren't entirely fair. But instead, David took a breath, looked his partner in the eye, and said, "Mark, what you just said clearly comes from a real place, and I respect you too much to give you a knee-jerk answer. Give me a day to really sit with this. I want to come back to you with something honest." And you know what happened? Mark, who had been red in the face 5 seconds ago, sat back in his chair and said, "Okay, yeah, okay." They met the next day. David came prepared, not with defenses, but with reflections. He acknowledged where Mark was right. He explained his perspective calmly. He proposed changes, and that conversation, which could have ended a business partnership, actually strengthened it. Mark later told David it was one of the most respectful things anyone had ever done for him in a professional setting, all because of a pause.
One more layer to this. I want to talk about the difference between reactive silence and intentional silence. Reactive silence is when you go quiet because you're angry, hurt, or shutting down. This is the silent treatment. It's passive-aggressive. It's toxic. And the other person can feel it. It's dripping with hostility. Intentional silence is what we're talking about here. It's warm. It's present. It's engaged. You're not withdrawing. You're leaning in. You're saying, I'm here. I'm listening. I'm processing. The difference is in the eyes, in the body language,
in the energy. When you use this reply, make sure your body is communicating openness. Uncross your arms. Maintain gentle eye contact. Maybe nod slowly. Let your face show that you're genuinely thinking. Furrowed brow, slight head tilt. These microsignals tell the other person, this silence is for you, not against you, and that makes all the difference. Smart reply number 3. What would you like me to do differently? Smart reply number 3. And this is the reply that therapists wish every couple would use. This is the reply that transforms arguments from blame games into action plans. What would you like me to do differently? Let me explain why this sentence is so revolutionary. Most arguments follow a pattern. I call it the complaint loop. It goes like this. Person A states a complaint. Person B defends themselves. Person A restates the complaint, louder. Person B defends themselves, louder. Person A brings up a second complaint. Person B brings up a complaint of their own. Now you have 4 unresolved complaints and 2 people yelling. This loop can go on for hours, days, years. Some couples have been stuck in the same complaint loop for a decade, the same fight, over and over. Different words, same loop. Why? Because no one ever moves from complaint to solution. A complaint without a requested action is just noise. It's emotional venting. And while venting has its place, it does not resolve conflicts. Only action resolves conflicts. When you say, what would you like me to do differently? You're doing something radical. You're breaking the loop. You're saying, in essence, I hear your complaint. I'm not going to argue about whether it's valid. I'm going to skip ahead to the part where we actually fix this. Tell me what you need from me. And most of the time, and this is the beautiful part, the other person doesn't even know what they want you to do differently. They've been so focused on the complaint that they've never actually thought about the solution. So now, instead of 2 people arguing, you have 2 people thinking together. You've turned an argument into a collaboration. Let me give you a detailed scenario. Your friend says, you're always late. Every time we make plans, I'm sitting there waiting for you like an idiot. It's so disrespectful. Normal response, defensive. That's not true. I was on time last Thursday, and you were late 2 weeks ago, so don't even start. What does that accomplish? Nothing. Now you're arguing about specific instances of lateness while the real issue, I don't feel like you respect my time, goes completely unaddressed. Instead, you're right, and I'm sorry. I know that's been frustrating. What would make it better? Would you prefer I text you a realistic ETA, or should we start building in a buffer when we make plans? Look at what just happened. You, 1, validated their feeling, you're right. 2, named the emotion. I know that's been frustrating. 3, asked for a specific solution. What would make it better? 4, offered concrete options, showing you've already started thinking about how to fix it. That's not weakness. That's leadership. That's emotional intelligence operating at a high level. And your friend, who was geared up for a 20-minute guilt trip, suddenly has nothing to fight against because you've already started solving the problem. Now, here's where this gets really interesting. Let's talk about what happens when you use this in a professional setting. Imagine you're in a meeting. A colleague, let's call her Sarah, publicly criticizes your proposal. She says, this approach is too risky. We tried something similar 3 years ago and it failed. I don't think this team has thought this through. Ouch. In front of everyone. Your ego is on fire. Your amygdala is screaming. You want to clap back. You want to say, actually, Sarah, if you'd read the full proposal instead of skimming it, you'd see that we've addressed every single one of those concerns. But you don't, because you've watched this video. Instead, you say, Sarah, I appreciate you bringing that up. That history is important context. What specifically would you want us to do differently to avoid the issues from 3 years ago? Now watch what happens in the room. First, Sarah is disarmed. She expected a fight. She got a collaboration request. Second, the power dynamic shifts.
You didn't get defensive. You got curious. In the eyes of everyone in that room, you just demonstrated confidence, composure, and leadership. Third, and this is the tactical genius, you've put the burden of constructive contribution on Sarah. She criticized your plan. Now she needs to offer something better, and that's much harder to do than tearing something down. If she has good suggestions, great, your project gets better, and you get credit for being receptive. If she doesn't have good suggestions, the room sees that her criticism was hollow. Either way, you win, and you never raised your voice. I want to address something important here, because some of you might be thinking,
What if the other person takes advantage of this? What if they start making unreasonable demands? Great question. And the answer is, this reply isn't a blank check. When you ask, what would you like me to do differently? You're opening a dialogue, not signing a contract. You're not promising to do whatever they say. You're asking them to move from complaining to problem solving. And if their answer is unreasonable, if they say something like, I want you to quit your job and spend every minute with me, then you have valuable information. Because now you know that the real issue isn't about your behavior, it's about their expectations. And that is a much more productive conversation to have. So this question isn't just a disarmament tool, it's also a diagnostic tool. It helps you identify what the other person actually needs, and whether that need is something you can reasonably meet. Let me give you one more layer, the advanced version. Sometimes you'll ask, what would you like me to do differently? And the person will say, I don't know, I just want you to stop being so selfish, careless, dismissive, whatever. They can't articulate a specific action because they're still in emotion mode. That's okay. Here's your follow-up. I understand, and I genuinely want to change that. Can we figure out together what that would look like in practice? Together. That word is magic. It transforms the dynamic from you versus me to us versus the problem. And that reframe, us versus the problem, is the single most important shift in any conflict. Smart reply number 4. I don't want to win this argument. I want to understand you. Smart reply number 4. And honestly, if you only remember one reply from this entire video, let it be this one. I don't want to win this argument. I want to understand you. If "you're right" is a precision scalpel, this reply is a defibrillator. It shocks the entire argument back to life, real life, human life, because it attacks the fundamental assumption that underlies every single conflict, that arguments are competitions. Think about the language we use for arguments. We win arguments, we lose arguments, we defeat the other person's point, we demolish their logic, we destroy them in a debate. It's the language of war. And when you frame a conversation as a war, there are only 2 possible outcomes. One person wins and one person loses, or both people lose. There is no outcome where both people win a war. But this reply reframes the entire interaction. It says, this isn't a war. This is 2 people trying to understand each other. And I'm opting out of the war. I'm choosing connection over conquest. And the effect on the other person is, I've seen it in real life. It's almost startling. People physically change. I've seen people who were mid-shout just stop, blink. Their face goes from anger to confusion to something that looks a lot like relief. Because most people don't want to be fighting. They fell into the fight because they felt unheard, and fighting was the only tool they had. When you offer them a different tool, understanding, they will almost always take it. Let me tell you about a study that illustrates this beautifully. Dr. John Gottman, probably the most famous relationship researcher in the world, runs what's informally known as the Love Lab at the University of Washington. He's spent decades studying couples, and he can predict with over 90% accuracy whether a couple will stay together or divorce just by watching them argue for 15 minutes. And you know what the number 1 predictor is? It's not how much they argue. It's not what they
argue about. It's not even how angry they get. It's whether during the argument, one partner makes what Gottman calls a repair attempt, and whether the other partner accepts it. A repair attempt is any statement or gesture that tries to de-escalate the conflict. It can be humor, it can be an apology, it can be a touch on the arm, it can be the tone of your voice shifting. But the most powerful repair attempt Gottman has ever identified? Expressing the desire to understand rather than to win. Couples who do this regularly, who pause mid-argument and say some version of, I don't want to fight, I want to get you, have dramatically higher rates of relationship satisfaction, longevity, and overall happiness. And the reason is simple. It reminds both people that they're on the same team. When you're arguing, it's so easy to forget that you love this person, that you chose this person, that you're building a life with this person. The argument creates an illusion of separateness, and this reply shatters that illusion. Now, let me be practical. Let me show you how this plays out in different contexts. Context 1, romantic relationship. Your partner says, you always shut me out. You never talk about your feelings. I feel like I'm in a relationship with a wall. Your instinct, I do talk about my feelings. I told you last month that I was stressed about work. What more do you want? Smart reply, take a breath, soften your voice. I don't want to defend myself right now. I want to understand what it feels like on your side. Tell me more about what shut out feels like to you. What you just did?
You resisted the urge to defend. You turned toward your partner instead of away. You asked them to go deeper into their experience instead of pulling the conversation back to your experience. This is radical. This is rare. And this is what love actually looks like in practice. Context 2. Family. Your parent says, I sacrificed everything for you, and you can't even come home for the holidays. Oh man, this one's loaded, right? Decades of guilt, expectation, love, resentment, all in one sentence. Your instinct, you always do this. You always guilt trip me. I have my own life, you know. Smart reply. Mom, Dad, I can hear how much this hurts you, and I don't want to argue about it. I want to understand why it's so important to you. Can we talk about that? Notice what happened. You didn't take the bait. You didn't engage with the guilt. You went underneath it to the feeling. And by asking, why is it so important to you? You're inviting them to express what's really going on, which is probably, I miss you. I'm aging. I'm scared of losing our connection. And that is a conversation worth having. Context 3. Friendship. Your friend says, must be nice to go on vacation while some of us are barely making rent. Ugh, passive-aggressive, loaded with resentment. Your instinct is either to apologize for your success, which isn't healthy, or to get defensive, which escalates things. Smart reply. I can tell something's been weighing on you, and I'd rather understand what you're going through than get into a back and forth. What's going on? You just reframed a passive-aggressive jab as a cry for help, because that's what it is. And your friend, who was probably ashamed of their jealousy and expressed it poorly, now has a chance to be honest instead of hostile. Here's the deeper truth behind this reply. Understanding does not mean agreeing. I want to hammer this point home because it's critical. You can understand why someone is angry without agreeing that they should be. You can understand someone's perspective without sharing it. You can understand someone's pain without accepting blame for it. Understanding is about seeing. That's all. It's about seeing the world through another person's eyes for a moment. And the act of seeing, just seeing, is often enough to resolve the conflict. Because here's the dirty secret of most arguments. People don't actually want you to change. They want you to see them. And once they feel seen, the urgency of the argument evaporates. I'll say it again because it's that important. Most people don't want you to change. They want you to see them. I don't want to win. I want
To understand. That's not weakness. That's the most powerful thing a human can say to another human, and it costs you nothing except your ego. Smart reply number 5. Can we start over? Smart reply number 5. And this one is so beautifully simple that most people overlook it entirely. Can we start over? 4 words, and they contain an entire philosophy of conflict resolution. Let me set the scene. You're 15 minutes into an argument. It's gone off the rails. You said something you didn't mean. They said something they didn't mean. You're both triggered. The original issue is buried under 7 layers of defensiveness and counter-accusations. Neither of you even remembers what started this. Sound familiar? Of course it does, because this is what happens in almost every prolonged argument. Arguments metastasize. They grow. They absorb old grievances, unrelated frustrations, and personal insecurities. What started as you forgot to pick up milk is now you never prioritize this family and maybe you're just like your father. And at some point, both people realize, even if they won't admit it, that this has gone too far, that they've said things they regret, that they're fighting about the fight now, not the issue. But no one knows how to get back. There's no graceful exit. Apologizing feels like losing. Backing down feels like surrender. So they keep pushing forward into territory that's increasingly destructive. This is where Can We Start Over is revolutionary. It's a reset button. It acknowledges without blame that the conversation went wrong. It doesn't assign fault. It doesn't require an apology from either side. It simply says, this isn't working. Let's try again. And the beauty of it is that it's an invitation, not a demand. You're not saying, we need to start over. That's controlling. You're not saying, this is your fault and we need to redo this. That's blaming. You're saying, can we start over? Collaborative, gentle, humble. It works because it gives both people permission to let go of the last 15 minutes. All those hurtful things that were said, they don't count anymore. We're starting from scratch, clean slate. And most people are desperate for that clean slate. They're exhausted by the fight. They want out, but they don't know how to get out without losing. Can we start over is the exit they've been waiting for. I want to share something personal here, because this reply saved a friendship for me. A few years ago, I got into a heated argument with one of my closest friends. I won't go into details, but it was about a decision I made that affected both of us. He felt blindsided. I felt like he was overreacting. Classic setup for disaster. And it went exactly how you'd expect. He accused, I defended, he escalated, I escalated. We both said things that crossed lines. At one point, he brought up something from 4 years ago that had nothing to do with the current situation, and I brought up a time he'd let me down.
We were both reaching for ammunition. About 20 minutes in, I was standing in his kitchen, voice raised, heart pounding, and I had this moment of clarity, this out-of-body experience where I looked at the two of us, two grown men, two people who genuinely care about each other, screaming about things that didn't even matter anymore. And I felt this overwhelming sadness, not anger, sadness. So I stopped, mid-sentence. I just stopped. And I said, "Hey, can we start over? Because I don't want this," gestures around. "I want to actually talk about this. And I don't think either of us is doing that right now." And I'll never forget his face. He went from angry to confused to almost relieved, like he'd been drowning and I threw him a rope. He took a breath and said, yeah, okay, let's start over." And we did. We sat down, we both acknowledged that the last 20 minutes were garbage, and we had an honest, calm, productive conversation about the actual issue. We found a resolution in about 10 minutes. 20 minutes of screaming, nothing accomplished. 10 minutes of calm dialogue, everything resolved. And the only thing that made the difference was 4 words. Can we start over? Let me give you some variations because the exact phrasing matters depending on the context. For romantic partners, "I love you and I don't like where this is going. Can we take a breath and try this conversation again?" The "I love you" at the beginning is crucial. It reminds both of you why this argument matters in the first place, because you love each other. For family, I think we've gotten off track. I really do want to talk about this, but not like this. Can we rewind? I really do want to talk about this. This is key for family, because family members often interpret a request to reset as an attempt to avoid the conversation. You need to reassure them that you're not running away. For work, I think we've both gotten a bit heated, and I don't think this is productive anymore. Would it help if we took 5 minutes and came back to this with fresh eyes? Would it help if... This phrasing is perfect for professional settings because it frames the reset as a productivity tool, not an emotional one. For friends, "Dude, this is dumb. We're better than this. Can we start over?" Sometimes with close friends, casual directness is the most effective approach. "This is dumb" isn't dismissive of their feelings, it's dismissive of the format. The argument format is dumb. The feelings are valid. Now, what if the other person says no? What if they say, "No, we're not starting over. We're going to finish this. This happens, and here's how you handle it." You stay calm, and you say, "I understand. You're not ready to reset, and that's okay. But I want you to know, I'm not going anywhere. I want to work this out. I just think we'll do a better job when we're both calmer. So whenever you're ready, I'm here." This does something remarkable. It takes all the urgency out of the argument. Arguments thrive on urgency, on the feeling that this must be resolved right now. When you remove that urgency, when you say, "Whenever you're ready, I'm here," you signal that this relationship is secure. It's not going anywhere. There's no deadline. We can solve this at a pace that works for both of us. And 9 times out of 10, the person will come back to you within minutes or hours, ready to have the real conversation. One last thing about this reply. I think "can we start over" is one of the most underrated phrases in the English language, not just for arguments, but for life in general. Think about how many relationships, friendships, romances, family bonds have been permanently damaged because 2 people got stuck in a bad moment and neither one had the courage to say, "Let's try again." Starting over isn't erasing what happened. It's not pretending the argument didn't occur. It's saying, what happened is not as important as what happens next. And that is a profoundly mature, profoundly courageous, profoundly human thing to believe. Smart reply number 6. I can see this is really important to you. Smart reply number 6. And this one targets the most primal human need, the need to feel that your emotions are legitimate. I can see this is really important to you. This reply is simple, it's short, and it does something that almost no one does in an argument. It validates the intensity of the other person's emotion without judging it. Here's why this matters so much. When someone is upset, really upset, there's something happening beneath the surface that most people miss. The person isn't just angry about the thing. They're anxious about whether their anger is justified. They're waiting for you to say, either explicitly or implicitly, "You're overreacting. This isn't a big deal. You're being too sensitive. You're being dramatic." And the moment they sense that dismissal, even a hint of it, their anger doubles. Because now they're not just angry about the original issue, they're angry that you're minimizing them. This is why calm down is the single worst thing you can say in an argument. Everyone knows this intuitively, yet people keep saying it. Calm down translates to, Your emotional response is disproportionate, and I am the judge of how you should feel. It's invalidating, it's condescending, and it has never once in the history of human communication actually calmed someone down. But I can see this is really important to you is the opposite of calm down. It translates to, I see the size of your emotion.
I acknowledge it. I'm not going to shrink it. I'm not going to judge it. I'm going to honor it. And something incredible happens when you honor someone's emotion. They no longer need to prove it to you. Think about that. When someone is yelling, escalating, repeating themselves, bringing up old examples, what are they doing? They're trying to prove to you that they have a right to be upset. They're building a case. They're presenting evidence because they don't trust that you'll take their feelings seriously without proof. But when you say, I can see this is really important to you, you've accepted the case without needing the evidence. You've said, I believe you before they had to convince you. And once someone feels believed, the compulsion to prove their point disappears. Let me show you this in action with a story. There's a therapist I admire named Lori Gottlieb. She wrote the best-selling book, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. She tells this incredible story about a couple in therapy. The wife was furious at the husband because he'd forgotten their anniversary. Not just the date, the dinner, the plans, everything, completely forgot. Now, the husband's response in sessions had been, it was an honest mistake. I've been stressed with work. I'm sorry. Can we move on? Reasonable, right? Logical, apologetic even. But the wife wasn't having it. She was still furious weeks later, and the husband couldn't understand why. Lori finally turned to the husband and said, she doesn't need you to explain why you forgot. She needs you to understand what your forgetting meant to her. And when the husband finally said, really said from his heart, I can see how much our anniversary means to you, and I can see how my forgetting it made you feel like our relationship isn't a priority to me. That must have been really painful. The wife broke down crying. Not angry tears, relief tears. Because for the first time, her husband wasn't arguing with her about facts. He was acknowledging her meaning. The anniversary wasn't about dinner. It was about significance. Do I matter to you? That's what she was really asking. And I can see this is really important to you is a way of answering, yes, you do. Here's how to use this across different scenarios. Scenario, a heated discussion with a sibling about how family responsibilities are divided. Your sibling says, I'm the one who always takes mom to her appointments. I'm the one who calls her every day. Where are you? Smart reply, I can see this is really weighing on you, and I can tell it's been unfair. You've been carrying more than your share, and I haven't acknowledged that enough. Let's talk about how we can balance this. Scenario, a colleague is upset about being passed over for a promotion. Your colleague says, it's such garbage. I've been here twice as long as Jake, and he gets the promotion? What's even the point? Smart reply, I can see this is really important to you, and honestly, it should be. You've put in serious work. Do you want to talk through what happened, or do you just need to vent right now? Notice that last line. Do you want to talk through it, or do you just need to vent? This is brilliant because it gives the other person agency. Sometimes people don't want solutions. They want to be heard. And asking them what they need rather than assuming is another form of validation. Scenario, a stranger, road rage, retail confrontation, online argument. Someone cuts in line and when you point it out, snaps at you. Mind your own business, I'm in a hurry. You could escalate. Or, smart reply, sounds like you're having a rough day. Go ahead. This is the minimalist version of I can see this is really important to you. It validates without engaging, and it denies the other person what they want most, a fight. Here's a concept I want to introduce, emotional generosity. Emotional generosity is the practice of giving people more grace than they might deserve in a given moment. It's choosing to see someone's worst behavior as a symptom rather than a character trait. It's assuming that the angry person in front of you is hurting, not evil. I can see this is really important to you is an act of emotional generosity. You're choosing to
Focus on the importance of their feeling rather than the annoyance of their delivery. And I'm not going to pretend this is easy. It's not. When someone is yelling at you, being nasty, being unreasonable, the last thing you want to do is be generous. You want to match their energy. You want to hurt them the way they're hurting you. But emotional generosity is like compound interest. Every time you practice it, you build emotional capital with the other person and within yourself. You become someone who can withstand storms without being destroyed by them. You become someone people trust, someone people turn to in crisis, someone who has a calming effect just by being in the room. That's not weakness. That's quiet, enormous strength. Smart reply number 7, I might be wrong about this. Smart reply number 7, 5 words that require genuine courage to say, I might be wrong about this.
Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Why would I say I'm wrong when I know I'm right? And the answer is, you don't know you're right. You think you're right. There's a massive difference. Every human being on this planet, every single one, walks around with an incomplete picture of reality. We see the world through our own experiences, biases, traumas, and blind spots. And most of the time, we're not even aware of these filters. We think we're seeing reality. We're seeing our version of reality. And here's the humbling truth. In most arguments, both people are right about something, and both people are wrong about something. The argument persists because each person is fixated on the part they're right about and blind to the part they're wrong about. I might be wrong about this cracks open the door to the possibility that your picture is incomplete, and that crack changes everything. Here's why. Intellectual humility is contagious. When one person in a conversation demonstrates openness to being wrong, the other person's defenses drop. It's almost involuntary, because the other person was bracing for certainty, for the rigid, immovable wall of I'm right and you're wrong. When they encounter openness instead, their brain doesn't know what to do with it. The combative posture becomes unnecessary. And often, not always, but often, the other person will reciprocate. They'll say some version of, well, I might not be seeing this completely clearly either. And now you're not arguing, you're exploring. You're two curious people trying to figure out the truth together. There's research on this from the field of epistemology and social psychology. Dr. Mark Leary at Duke University has studied intellectual humility extensively, and his findings are striking. People who demonstrate intellectual humility are rated as more trustworthy by peers, more likely to learn from disagreements, less likely to hold grudges, better at maintaining relationships during conflict, and here's the kicker, more likely to ultimately be proven right. That last one sounds paradoxical, but it makes perfect sense. When you're open to being wrong, you actually listen to the other person's arguments. You consider evidence you might have dismissed. You update your position based on new information. And as a result, your final position is more accurate, more grounded in reality than it would have been if you'd stubbornly clung to your original stance. In other words, being willing to be wrong makes you more likely to end up right. Meanwhile, the person who insists they're right from the beginning, they stop listening. They stop learning. They win the argument, but lose the truth. Let me show you the tactical use of this. Scenario: political, social disagreement at a dinner party. Someone says something you deeply disagree with. Your instinct is to launch into a passionate rebuttal. Instead, I might be wrong about this, but my understanding was your perspective. What makes you see it differently? What makes you see it differently? That question is gold. It's non-threatening, it's genuinely curious, and it often leads to a real exchange of ideas instead of a shouting match. Scenario: disagreement with your partner about a parenting decision. Your partner wants to handle a situation with your kid one way. You want to handle it another way. Instead of, no, that's the wrong approach. They need, try, I might be wrong about this. I've been thinking about it from your angle, but maybe there's something I'm not seeing. What's your
Thinking. This isn't capitulation. This is partnership. You're saying, we're both trying to do what's best for our child. Let's figure it out together. And I'm open to the possibility that your way might be better. Scenario: work disagreement about strategy. Your team is debating two approaches. You feel strongly about yours, but instead of digging in, I might be wrong about this, and I want to make sure we're making the best decision, not just the one I'm most attached to. Can someone make the strongest case for the other approach? In a professional setting, this reply doesn't make you look weak. It makes you look like the smartest person in the room. Because the smartest person in the room isn't the one with the loudest opinion. It's the one who actively seeks out challenges to their own thinking. Now, here's the nuance. You don't say, I might be wrong, when you know you're right and you're just being manipulative. If someone says 2 + 2 = 5, you don't say, I might be wrong. There are times when you are right and the other person is wrong, and the appropriate response is a clear, calm, factual correction. I might be wrong is for genuinely complex, subjective, multi-layered disagreements, where if you're being honest with yourself, you can't be 100% certain. And in my experience, that's about 95% of arguments. The 5% where you're absolutely right, stand your ground. The 95% where there's genuine complexity, lead with humility. That ratio will serve you well for the rest of your life. Smart reply number 8. We're on the same side here. Smart reply number 8. And this is the one that reframes the entire architecture of an argument. We're on the same side here.
Let me explain why this is so powerful by introducing a concept from game theory. In game theory, there are two types of games: zero-sum games and non-zero-sum games. In a zero-sum game, one person's gain is another person's loss. Poker, chess, boxing. If I win, you lose, period. In a non-zero-sum game, it's possible for both people to win, or both to lose. Most real-life situations are non-zero-sum games. But here's the problem. We treat most arguments like zero-sum games when they're actually non-zero-sum games. When you're arguing with your partner about household responsibilities, you're not enemies. You both want a clean house and a fair distribution of work. You're on the same side, but the argument feels like your opponents. When you're arguing with a colleague about how to approach a project, you both want the project to succeed. You're on the same side, but the disagreement feels like a competition. When you're arguing with a family member about holiday plans, you both want to spend time together. You're on the same side, but the logistics feel like a battle. We're on the same side here shatters the zero-sum illusion. It reminds both people, we have a shared goal. The argument isn't you against me, it's us against the problem. And the moment both people orient toward the shared goal, the argument transforms. It stops being about winning and starts being about problem solving. Let me give you a detailed example. You and your business partner are arguing about whether to hire a new employee or redistribute the existing workload. You think you need to hire. Your partner thinks you should redistribute. You've been going back and forth for an hour. At a certain point, you pause and say, "Hey, I want to point out something. We're both trying to solve the same problem. We have too much work and not enough capacity. We're on the same side here. We just have different ideas about the solution. So let's stop arguing about whose idea is right and start evaluating which solution actually fixes the problem best." What just happened? You pulled the camera back. You zoomed out from the specific disagreement and reminded both of you about the shared objective. And once you see the shared objective, the specific disagreement becomes less personal. It's no longer my idea versus your idea. It's idea A versus idea B. Which one serves our shared goal better? This is called reframing, and it's one of the most powerful tools in communication. You're not changing the facts of the situation. You're changing the frame through which both people see the situation. And a new frame leads to new thoughts, new feelings, and new solutions.
Here are more contexts where this works beautifully. Parenting disagreements with a co-parent. We both love our kids and want what's best for them. We're on the same side. We just need to figure out the best path forward. Negotiations, salary, contracts, etc. I think we both want to make this work. We're not adversaries here. We're two people trying to find terms that feel fair to both sides. Arguments with aging parents about their care. Mom, I know this is hard, but we all want the same thing, for you to be safe and happy. We're on the same side. Let's figure this out together. Political or social disagreements. I think we actually want the same things. Safety, fairness, opportunity. We just disagree about how to get there, but we're not as far apart as it feels right now. That last one is especially powerful in today's polarized world. So many arguments, political, cultural, social, are between people who share fundamental values but differ on methods, and the argument about methods feels like a war about values. We're on the same side cuts through that illusion. The deeper lesson here is about identity. When you're in an argument, you unconsciously adopt an identity, the opponent, the adversary, the person who must defend their position at all costs. We're on the same side invites you to adopt a different identity, the collaborator, the partner, the person who can hold their own perspective lightly enough to work towards a shared solution. And here's what's beautiful. When you change how you see yourself in the argument changes. If you're an opponent, every word from the other person is an attack to be countered. If you're a collaborator, every word from the other person is information to be integrated. Same words, different identity, completely different outcome. Smart reply number 9. You don't have to agree with me. I just want you to hear me. Smart reply number 9, and this one addresses a fear that runs silently beneath almost every argument, the fear that listening means losing. You don't have to agree with me. I just want you to hear me. Most people resist hearing the other side because they think hearing equals agreeing. They think that if they listen, really listen, they'll be pressured into changing their position. So they don't listen, they reload. But this reply removes that pressure entirely. It says, keep your position. I'm not trying to change your mind. I just want 5 minutes of genuine listening. And paradoxically, when you remove the pressure to agree, people become more open to actually considering your point because they're no longer defending. They're just hearing.
This is the psychological principle of reactance reduction. Reactance is the human tendency to resist persuasion. The harder you try to change someone's mind, the harder they dig in. It's why aggressive salespeople are less effective than consultative ones. It's why lecturing teenagers makes them more rebellious. It's why political debates rarely change anyone's mind. But when you explicitly say, "I'm not trying to persuade you," when you remove the persuasion intent, reactance drops. And ironically, your words become more persuasive because they're finally being heard without resistance. I want to give you a very specific technique here that combines this reply with active listening. It's called the mutual hearing agreement, and I think it can transform any relationship. Here's how it works. When an argument starts escalating, one person says, "Can we try something? I'll listen to everything you have to say. Really listen, without interrupting. And then you do the same for me. Neither of us has to agree. We just have to hear each other." And then you actually do it. Person A speaks for 5 minutes. Person B listens without interrupting. No rebuttals, no corrections, no facial expressions of disagreement. Then they switch. You'd be amazed at what happens. When people feel truly heard, truly fully heard without defense or interruption, the intensity of their emotions drops by 50% or more, because half of the anger in any argument is frustration at not being heard. Remove that frustration and the anger halves. After both people have spoken, you'll often find that the distance between your positions is much smaller than it seemed, because most of the distance was created by misunderstanding, misinterpretation, and the fog of emotional reactivity. Clear the fog, and the gap shrinks.
One more application. This is for those situations where someone has a fundamentally different worldview from yours, and you know you're not going to reach agreement. Let's say you're having a conversation with a family member about a deeply divisive topic. You know you're not going to change their mind, and they're not going to change yours. In those moments, most people either A, argue harder, which creates resentment, or B, avoid the topic entirely, which creates distance. But there's a third option. I know we see this differently, and I don't think either of us is going to change the other's mind today, and that's okay. But I'd like you to understand where I'm coming from. Not so you'll agree, just so you'll know me, because your understanding matters to me, even if we disagree. That's not arguing, that's not avoiding, that's connecting. You're saying, our relationship is bigger than this disagreement. I want you to know me, even in the places where we differ. And most people, even people who disagree with you profoundly, will respect that, because it's genuine, it's vulnerable, and it prioritizes the relationship over the argument. Smart reply number 10. I care about this relationship more than I care about this argument. Smart reply number 10, the final one. And I saved it for last because it's the one that sits at the heart of everything we've talked about today. I care about this relationship more than I care about this argument. This is the master key, the one that opens every lock. Because every smart reply we've discussed today is at its core a variation of this single truth. Relationships matter more than being right. Say it out loud with me, whether you're alone in your car, at the gym, lying in bed, sitting at your desk. Say it. I care about this relationship more than I care about this argument. How does that feel? It feels clarifying, doesn't it? Like cleaning a foggy windshield. Suddenly you can see the road. Because in the heat of an argument, we lose sight of the road. We become so fixated on the point, the comeback, the perfect counter-argument, that we forget we're talking to a human being we love, a human being who will still be in our life tomorrow, next week, next year, a human being whose good opinion of us matters more than any debate victory. And this reply, said sincerely, said from the heart, brings the whole thing back into focus. It says, you are more important to me than this disagreement. Us is more important than this. And I refuse to sacrifice something permanent for something temporary. Let me share one final story. An elderly couple was being interviewed. They'd been married for 62 years. The interviewer asked, "What's the secret to staying together this long?" The wife looked at her husband, smiled, and said, "We decided early on that we'd rather be together than be right." 62 years. And the secret wasn't perfect communication. It wasn't never arguing. It wasn't compatibility or passion or luck. It was a decision. A daily, deliberate decision to prioritize the relationship over the argument. That's it. That's the whole game. And every single one of the 10 replies I've given you today is a tool for making that decision in real time, in the heat of the moment, when your emotions are screaming at you to do the opposite. So let me walk you through how to use this final reply in practice, because the delivery matters. Step 1, recognize the moment. There will be a point in the argument, and if you're paying attention, you'll feel it, where you realize that continuing the fight will cause damage, real damage, the kind that's hard to undo. You feel it in your stomach.
It's the moment right before someone says something unforgivable. That's when you use this reply. Step 2, stop. Physically, stop talking. Drop your hands if they're gesturing. Take a breath. Lower your voice by 50%. Step 3, say it, slowly. I care about you, and I care about this relationship, more than I care about being right, more than I care about this argument. So I'm gonna stop fighting now. Not because I don't have more to say. I do, but because winning this argument isn't worth losing us. Step 4, mean it. This is the hardest
part, because you do have more to say. Your ego is screaming. You do think you're right. And choosing to set all that down, to lay down your weapons, takes genuine strength. But I promise you, the moment you do it, you will feel something shift. Not just in the other person, in yourself. You'll feel lighter because you just chose love over ego. And that choice, no matter how small it seems, is one of the most powerful things a human being can do. One more context, and then I'll bring this all together. What about when the relationship isn't healthy? What about when the other person is toxic, manipulative, or abusive? Does this still apply? The answer is no, and I want to be crystal clear about this because this is important. Everything I've taught you today is designed for conflicts between people who fundamentally care about each other, people who are arguing in good faith, people who want resolution, even if they can't see how to get there. But if you're dealing with someone who consistently disrespects you, manipulates you, gaslights you, or abuses you, these replies are not the answer. In those situations, the smartest reply is, I deserve better, and I'm going to find it, followed by a door closing behind you. Boundaries are not the opposite of the skills I've taught you. They are the foundation of them. You can only be generous, open, humble, and validating from a position of self-respect. If that foundation is missing, if you're being mistreated, the most important argument to win is the one with yourself, the one where you decide that you're worth protecting. Closing section, the integration. So, let's bring this all together. 10 smart replies, each one designed to end arguments calmly. Let me list them one more time. Number 1, you're right. Validate to disarm. Number 2, I need a moment to think about what you just said. Pause to recalibrate. Number 3, what would you like me to do differently? Move from complaint to solution. Number 4, I don't want to win this argument. I want to understand you. Choose connection over conquest. Number 6, can we start over? Reset the conversation. Number 6, I can see this is really important to you. Validate the emotion. Number 7, I might be wrong about this. Lead with humility. Number 8, we're on the same side here. Reframe from opponents to partners. Number 9, you don't have to agree with me. I just want you to hear me. Reduce resistance through openness. Number 10, I care about this relationship more than I care about this argument. Prioritize love over ego. But here's what I really want you to take away from this video. It's not the replies themselves. Replies are just words, and words without intention are empty. What I want you to take away is the mindset behind the replies. And that mindset is this. In every conflict, you have a choice. You can choose to be a warrior, or you can choose to be a healer. The warrior fights to win. The healer listens to mend. The warrior builds walls. The healer builds bridges. The warrior speaks to defeat. The healer speaks to understand. And the irony, the beautiful, frustrating irony, is that the healer almost always gets what the warrior is fighting for. Peace, respect, understanding, connection. The warrior uses force and ends up alone. The healer uses empathy and ends up surrounded by people who would do anything for them. That's the paradox. You win arguments by not fighting them. You earn respect by giving it. You gain power by showing vulnerability. It sounds backwards. It sounds naive. It sounds like something a greeting card would say. But I have seen it work. In my own life, in the lives of people I admire, in the research of scientists who have devoted their careers to studying human connection. It works. Not every time, not with every person, not in every situation, but enough, more than enough to transform your relationships, enough to change how people see you, enough to change how you see yourself. So here's my challenge to you. This week, just this week, pick one of these 10 replies, just one, and use it in a real argument with a real person
when your heart is racing,
and your ego is screaming, and every instinct is telling you to fight back. Choose the reply instead. Choose calm. Choose connection. Choose courage. And then come back and tell me what happened. I want to hear your stories. I want to hear how it went. Because I know that if you try this, something will change. Maybe something small. Maybe something enormous. But something. And that something will be the beginning of a different kind of strength. A quiet strength. The kind that doesn't shout, doesn't boast, doesn't compete. The kind that simply says, I'm here. I'm listening. And I'm not going anywhere. Thank you for spending the last 2 hours with me. I know that's a lot of time, and the fact that you're still here tells me something about you. You care about doing this better. You care about being better, not for your ego, but for the people you love. And that already makes you exactly the kind of person who can do this. I'll see you in the next one.